I'm finding myself putting on weight, which is distressing. One thing that can help us keep in shape is by choosing heavier writing implements. The pen I'm going to review today is the Kaigelu 316, a notoriously heavy pen, which also has the distinction of being wildly unbalanced. But let's reverse. What have I let myself in for with this concept? That's better. At least I think I can do it this way. So, first impressions of the Kaigelu 316. What are they? Well, the first impressions a lot of people will notice are its resemblance to the Parker Duofold. This is a Parker Duofold from the 1940s, I believe. And they both share certain distinctive features. They both have flat tops. They both have a sort of dual cap band. They both have a certain chunkiness and heft to them. They both also write rather nicely, although this one writes like a dream and this one writes with certain caveats. You hold it in your hand, uncapped, and you can almost instantly feel how unbalanced it is. It's extraordinary weight, 46 grams in total. Uncapped is 31 grams. And most of that 31 grams seems to be located in the rear finial. This is mystifying. Why on earth would you create a handsome, substantial, and well-made pen like this? I'm abandoning my concept. I've been languishing for weeks, and it shows, and I'm humiliated. No, but let's talk about this mystifying but compelling fountain pen from the Shanghai manufacturer Kaigelu, which means, among other things, among other strands of nonsense, kangaroo. This kangaroo is embedded behind a very sort of delectable little nubule of transparent acrylic. The lower finial is entirely and resolutely flat. A little like I'm becoming entirely and resolutely fat. But who cares? I'm alive. I have a fountain pen to review. Things could be worse, a lot worse. Let's go on. Keep our minds on happier things and more frivolous things. It's the little things that count. It's the little things that you can do to help that matter. It's the little moments in our lives that we should cherish, not great, big notions of perfection. So let's concentrate on this pen. Where am I? Materials. This is quite widely advertised as being made out of celluloid, particularly by eBay sellers and things like that. And a lot of people take that at face value. That is a mistake. This pen is made out of acrylic. A lot of people want to believe it's celluloid because it's a, relatively speaking, quite cheap pen. And the idea of, well, celluloid has some cachet. Celluloid is a substance, one of the earlier substances that was used to construct fountain pens. It has some cachet now because, well, it's expensive. I think that's the main reason. Well, it's expensive and it's beautiful. Celluloid is expensive because it's made by a rather laborious process. You extract cotton fibers, you add nitric acid, you add various other rather toxic sounding substances, and you create a sort of paste or batter. And this is the paste, and it's colourless. This is the great thing about, so this was the great innovation of celluloid when it was first used in pen design. This paste or batter is colourless. You can add pigments to it, and it's also semi-liquid. It's a gel, I suppose. I'm not a scientist, but I think you might call it a gel. And what that means is you can disperse colours through it in a very attractive and gorgeous way. I'm not sure if my Parker Duofold is celluloid. If anyone can ID this more precisely for me, I'd be delighted. But the pattern here is a little bit, well, it sort of exemplifies some of the depth and the nacre-like qualities that people prize in celluloid, which are possible because it's colourless to begin with, and it's a gel. So you can disperse your pigments through it in interesting ways, and then you can layer up different celluloid productions, different colour schemes. You can layer them up, blend them, mash them together, and create these gorgeous iridescent effects. Nacre-like, incidentally, is a less laborious way of saying mother of pearl-like. You discover some wonderful, wonderful words and turns of phrase in the fountain pen community online. It's one of my favourite things to do. Trawl around looking for funny words people use. The reason celluloid, however, is expensive is, well, I've yet to cover that. Firstly, the problem is you can't injection mold it because of its properties. You have to machine it. And here's where you start running into problems, because big problem, the big terrifying problem with celluloid pens, and well, celluloid as a substance, is that it's highly flammable. It's not precisely, people aren't worried about celluloid pens exploding in your hand. They're not banned on aircraft as far as I know. However, when you're machining them, when you're machining the parts, you're creating heat because of the friction. And you're creating lots of little shavings as well, so which are potentially rather dangerous. Its main use, its scaled use, was in film stock, in cinemas. It's highly flammable, borderline explosive, and you're gathering a crowd of your dear community members into a darkened room. You're turning off the lights. You have quite a limited number of exits, and you're distracting them for 2 hours. And you're firing a rather hot bulb through a very thin, flammable substance, the celluloid. And they stopped doing this in about 1950, and it only took about 100 years. Probably not a good idea to use this explosive material. Pen manufacturers Leonardo, for example, who still produce wonderful celluloid pens, and round of applause to them because they're gorgeous. But expensive. This is not expensive, nor is it celluloid. The two go somewhat hand in hand. No clippability issues with this pen. The only notable thing I'd say is that it's quite a long clip, which is interesting. And because of the weight, you don't want to, well, you wouldn't want to clip it if you're wearing, I don't know, silk pajamas or something. A colour that it's one of these muted but rather pretty colour schemes. I really want to use rude descriptions. King Lear's nostril would be what I'd call this. Do you know, I'm going to get back on the bike. You know, you've got to be persistent. You've got to keep going. You've got to, you know, apparently. The acrylic is sort of smooth, somewhat lubricious, you might call it. And in the hand, I mean, once it's heated up. So I suppose particularly if you're using this to write while you're exercising, you may find that it gets a little slippery. Now, clippability, an important aspect of any pen as far as I'm concerned, and particularly important if you're doing vigorous exercise. So let's have a look at this clip. It's a particularly long clip and it's very secure. It's very tight in there. But of course, as you can see, it's got a lot of weight to it. Very prone to damaging one's shirt. What can we do about the weight of this pen? What a lot of people do is they either replace this lower finial, which is very heavy, solid brass, makes the pen sit back in your hand like a kind of overweight, sweltering, tomato-like sunbather perched on a brittle white plastic sun lounger. I don't know, wobbling up and down as they apply sun cream. You know what I mean? It's balanced to the rear and feels somewhat unwieldy, is what I'm trying to say. And I've even seen people who drill into the brass and manage to get rid of about 6 grams and report back that the effect is pleasing. I have, apart from the balance issue, which I really do feel the urge to be unbalanced about because it is wildly noticeable. The only things I really want to say about this pen are that it's a great writer. Let's have a look at the nib. It's a 2-tone steel nib, not a lot of flex in there. The words Kaigelu and a dear little kangaroo are perched in the center of our nib. And it writes beautifully. It writes with a certain dash. You feel, because of the weight, the import of the pen, it seems almost like an occasion pen. And that's only exacerbated by the lovely, steady, wet flow of the nib. It's a really nice line that this lays down. It moves very smoothly across the page. And it's a real pleasure to write with, actually. I enjoy it a lot. And, oh yeah, the other thing to add is the converter is a dream. Really good converter. Fills magnificently this proprietary, or at least Kaigelu branded cartridge converter, which the pen comes supplied with. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't have the wherewithal to start drilling out the rear end of this pen. Although I don't mind the balance issue, I probably would not end up carrying this around with me. I would leave it on my desk. I feel the urge to defend it because it has so much going for it. And I feel the urge not to overemphasize the balance issue, but it is there. It is impossible not to notice. And it's very tiring to hold up for this length of time, which serves some purpose in these increasingly sedentary times. Welcome to the writing sample section of the Kaigelu 316. I think you can already start to see the rather luscious line it lays down. Plenty of ink flow with this darling thing. A nice sort of fat medium, is it? Would you say? Yes, a fat medium line. I'm using Rhodia. Yeah, you see how wet that is? Quite something. I'm using Rhodia paper, cheap little Rhodia notepad that I got in a motorway service station back when the world was really delightful. And I'm using Conklin 120th anniversary blue ink, which I just adore. So let's have a look at some sustained writing. Lovely. Panda. Seeks. Jinxed. zebra. Quick game of whist. Gorgeous. Really satisfying to write with this pen. And for a short little time like this, the balance issue is unproblematic. Really unproblematic. It just sits back there, and I wouldn't say it's even a hindrance. It's just something you notice to such an extent that it's a distraction. That's what it is. It's not a hindrance, it's a distraction. And all power to the people who go about the project of replacing this lower finial. With a more sensible balance to this pen, it would be a stupendous addition to any collection. I thought I'd do this pen review. I do want it to be clear that I'm on the damn bike. This is a one-man operation at the moment. So you'll have to bear with me. Is that better, that angle? Okay. God, it keeps me entertained though. I don't know about you.